Welcome to the Martin Bailey Photography Podcast. It's February 12, 2018, and this is episode 607. Today we conclude our Travelogue series from my recent Hokkaido winter landscape photography adventure tour and workshop as we pick up the trail on the morning of day 8 as we left Wakkanai and first visited the Soya fishing port at the northernmost tip of Japan. Uncommon for Hokkaido in winter, especially this far north. When we arrived at the Soya fishing port, the sky couldn't decide whether to snow or to rain. For the first 30 minutes or so, it was raining, which is very out of character. This shortly gave way to snow though, which you can see falling in this first image for today. If you're not listening on an iOS device or in iTunes where you can actually see the images that we're talking about, then you can go over to the blog at mbp.ac/607 to follow along with each image that we're talking about here. I cropped this down to a 1:2 aspect ratio as the foreground snow and the top of the sky weren't really adding much to the scene. After increasing the contrast in the sky, I like how we can see plumes of snow as they blow in on the gusts of wind. I also set my ISO to 400 for an 80th of a second exposure at f9 to avoid camera shake from those gusts of wind. My focal length was 28mm with my 24 to 105mm lens. Because we were shooting directly into the snow, this is one of those times when I wipe my lens with a lens cloth while keeping a second cloth draped over the front of the lens. Then with a 2-second timer, I wait until a split second before the shutter is released and then pull the cloth away for the exposure. I then check to see if there's anything on the lens, and if there's not, I know that I'm good to move on. If there's a drop of water on the lens, I'll repeat the process until I get a spot-free shot. We stop at a number of fishing ports on the way around the tip of Hokkaido, then drive down the eastern coast to our stop for the next 2 nights at a small town with a port that has some nice, strategically placed tetrapods, as you can see in this next image. I shot this at the end of the day as the light came on in the lighthouse, leaving a streak of light on the water in this 2-minute exposure. As the light was already very low, I think I was using the 2.0 density ND filter in the holder on the back of my 11 to 24mm lens, which is 6.6 stops. I went for an equal amount of sand on the beach, allowing me to also be almost square on with the tetrapods rather than bringing the lighthouse and distant tetrapods more into the frame, although that does look a little bit awkward. My ISO was set to 100 and aperture to f14. The following morning before breakfast we went back to the port for an hour or so, and as you can see in this next image, it had snowed, and the sea was so calm that the snow was still settled right down to the water's edge. The sun was just over the horizon on the right of this image, making the sky a little brighter there, but it didn't quite make its way through the thick cloud, which suits me just fine. I'm doing all of my black and white conversions in Capture One Pro and love the amount of texture we can see in the snow, especially on the tetrapods to the left, where we have all of that great contrast with the dark concrete. I've also dropped a graduated mask down the sky and around the top of the tetrapods to the left, and darkened the sky down a little. I much prefer doing this in post, as a physical graduated neutral density filter would have dropped down across the top of the tetrapods, making them too dark. Also, those big square filters are a pain to use in the snow, which is another reason why I've been using circular screw-in neutral density filters exclusively for more than 15 years now. My settings for this image were ISO 100 for a 13-second exposure at f16 with a focal length of 15mm, again with my 11 to 24mm lens. After breakfast, we set out for an exploratory drive inland. I have to admit that I wasn't looking out of our bus window as I discussed plans with our logistics staff, but luckily one of the participants called out, so we stopped to photograph this beautiful scene, still very close to our hotel. We cross this bridge every year and I haven't seen the trees looking this way before, so I'm pleased someone was paying attention. I really liked the contrast between the light snow that had stuck to the top side of all of the trees in the foreground, as well as covering the trees on the bank of this estuary. And of course, those golden grasses that were still showing through because of the relatively light covering of ground snow add so much to this shot that I couldn't bring myself to convert it to black and white. My settings were ISO 100 for a 30th of a second at f14, and I was using my 100 to 400mm lens at 182mm to isolate a small section of the larger scene. Across the road from the bridge over the estuary there was a barn that appears to be abandoned, so I spent a while looking for an angle that worked for me. From most angles, there were foreground trees that covered the barn, but I quite liked this final angle that I decided on, again with the snow outlined trees and those beautiful golden grasses showing through. If I ever print this, I'll probably clone out the grasses poking in from the bottom edge of the frame, especially along the bottom right, but for now, I'm running with this version to save time. My settings were ISO 100 for a 40th of a second at f14, back with my 24 to 105mm lens at 105mm. We continued down the road that we'd pulled our bus onto, which is one road north parallel to the road that I'd planned to drive down. And we found that the snow and perhaps humidity had caused the light snow to stick to all of the trees, not just those near the estuary, making for some beautiful scenery, as we'll see over the next few images. In this first shot from inland, I really like how the deciduous trees covered with snow stand out against the evergreen trees in the background. I have enabled black and white in Capture One Pro for this image, but I can actually not see any visible difference, as the scene was almost completely black and white anyway. For this shot, I was actually shooting handheld, having just jumped onto a bank of snow from the bus, and we were parked in a place that I didn't want to stay at for very long. My settings were ISO 200 for a 100th of a second at f14 and a focal length of 105mm. We drove along the road a little more and found a better stretch of road to park on and walked back a little to photograph the magical scene that you can see in this next image. I use the word winter wonderland a lot in reference to my Japan winter tours, but this photo is one of those that sums that up better than most others. The trees here were absolutely beautiful, and a stream that was flowing under the snow caused some wonderful curves in the foreground snow in front of the trees. I removed a few clumps of snow-covered grass from the left and right sides of this image, but other than that, and a bit of clarity and a very subtle luma curve, this is pretty much straight out of the camera. Again, I also enabled black and white, but the original was almost already there. My settings were ISO 100 for a 40th of a second at f14 and a focal length of 70mm. This next image is from the same location, but just a little bit further up the hill, so that I could include part of the large black tree on the left. I've cloned out a large number of blades of grass in the foreground of this one, but this was otherwise really just such a beautiful scene, and I love the contrast between the white birch trees and the other darker trees, all sharing a common covering of snow. I'm seriously considering making my own Christmas card with this image for this year, printing them on fine art paper. To be totally honest, I find the whole Christmas card thing very tedious, especially being in Japan, where we don't really celebrate Christmas. But doing something special like that might make it a little bit more interesting. My settings for this were ISO 100 for a 50th of a second at f14 and a focal length of 50mm. The following day we took a drive over to a place that I like with a small copse of trees on top of a hill. This year we walked quite a way up and over the hill along the road, and at one point the light was catching the edge of a snowdrift, adding an additional element of interest that I absolutely love. And you can see that in this next image. I went with a 4x5 crop for this photo, reducing the sky mostly, as I found that it worked better. The grey sky wasn't adding much, and I wanted to draw the eye down to the snow-covered hill and highlighted snowdrift, and that seemed to work better with the crop. I also really like the line of the fence that runs down the hill. There's just something about this location and subject that really appealed to the minimalist photographer in me. My settings were ISO 100 for a 30th of a second at f14, and I was using my 100 to 400mm lens at its full extent, so 400mm. You can probably appreciate how low the light levels are, even during the day, with these low shutter speeds. The following day we went out exploring again for a while and found a beautiful frosty plain, so we all climbed down the bank beside a bridge to get a closer look. Moving in gradually so as not to get in each other's way, we got to a point where we could each start to photograph the frosty grasses close up, as you can see in this image. I had initially preferred this shot in black and white, but once again I couldn't quite give up on the golden colour of the grasses. As I prepared to record this episode, I tried it again in colour and darkened the grasses down a little with the colour editor in Capture One Pro. I also drew in an adjustments layer over the sky to just darken it down slightly, as it was a little bit washed out. My settings were ISO 200, again because there was a bit of wind, but this time I wanted to reduce the risk of the grasses moving by increasing my shutter speed to a 200th of a second at f14, and my focal length was 50mm. Later in the day we visited another favourite spot of mine, where there's a lone tree at the side of Lake Saruma, and as with the other shots from this area, there was a lot of golden grass that would usually be more covered in snow. Because I selected my settings to stop the sky from overexposing, for this image the grass had gone a little bit dark, so I brightened them up with the colour editor, but otherwise I quite like what they add to this image. And again, there is that snow on the dark boughs of the tree adding an extra bit of contrast that we don't normally get. My settings were ISO 100 for a 100th of a second exposure at f14 and a focal length of 35mm. The following morning, we had a few hours to shoot before heading off to the airport and back to Tokyo. We visited the lighthouse at Cape Notoro, but the wind was really strong, so I ended up spending most of my time there shooting video of the snow driving across the plain, which I'll use in a production at some point. Our last shoot was about 15 minutes from the airport when we shot some farm buildings, and some members of the group got invited in for tea by a kind lady that lives there. I have a few shots, but they aren't great due to the shadow of some power lines. Another reason why I love to shoot in overcast conditions, so I'll wait until I catch that spot on a cloudy day to reshoot. After that, we recorded a comment from most of the members of the group, which I'll play you now. Okay, so here we are at we're just coming to the end of the 2018 Hokkaido Winter Landscape Adventure Tour and Workshop, and as usual we're on the bus on the way to the airport and perhaps have one last shoot, but we're going to go around the bus quickly and get a comment from each of the participants. So Pepe, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, this was an amazing trip for me. By far, BA is my number one spot. All the rest was also very interesting. And I would like to thank Martin and the whole crew to make this an unforgettable trip.
Oh, thank
So
you.
it was really amazing trip.
Thank you. Would you like to say a few words? Where?
Let's say in Korean or English.
It's up to you.
I think Korean is better, yeah?
Yeah, it's up to you, yeah.
Okay. 안녕하세요. 저는 한국에서 온 사람인데요. 이번 그 홋카이도 여행에서 정말 멋진 구경하고 그다음에 많은 것을 배워갑니다. 혹시 한국 분들이 이 마틴 베리 그 투어에 참여하실 수 있으면은 많은 도움이 될 것입니다. 정말로 유익한 여행이었습니다. 감사합니다.
Thank you very much. Steve, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, I'm Steve Boucher. Live near Boston in the United States. Came on this trip, something I've always wanted to do, and it completely met my expectations. The beautiful landscapes, shooting in the snow, shooting after snowstorms, just was really magical. So I'd recommend the trip to anyone. It was fantastic. And Martin did a wonderful job, and his team as well. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Juan, would you like to say something?
Spanish, English, no, English.
It's up to you.
English. Well, I'm Juan from Spain. What I like the most in this trip is that Martin is always ready to explain how he takes the pictures, how, the composition, why he's selecting this kind of composition, what he's feeling with that, how he processes the pictures. So it's something. It's like he has no hidden secrets there. So if you want to learn, you have a good opportunity in this trip. And by the way, hotels and the meals are really excellent.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yolanda, would you like to say something?
Yeah, I'm Yolanda from Spain, and Juan is my husband, and he said most of the things I had in mind. I'm a very passionate snow person, and and if you are, Hokkaido in winter will be your paradise, no doubt.
Thank you. Would you like to say a few words?
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm Dennis from Dallas, Texas. This is the end of the trip. Martinson was our leader. He is a self-proclaimed namer of trees, blizzard meister, and Lord of the Icicles. He has a lovely team with him, including a master coachman, king of the wheels, and he also has a tour director who is a princess of counting heads, and showering us with love and sweetness. We had a great trip, and I think everybody is able to go home with quite a large portfolio of landscape pictures of this beautiful land and territory at snow time.
Okay. Thank you very much. Barbara?
Hi, my name's Barbara Brown. I'm from Perth, Western Australia, where I've come from 40 degrees down to minus 15. I came here to get some great minimalist photography and photographs, and I certainly achieved that. I think the workshop was very well designed. Being able to stay at every place for a couple of hours made us, or gave us the opportunity to do our own thing. So that was great. Thanks, Martin.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm Dennis from the UK. I've been to Japan a number of times, but Hokkaido at winter is a very, very special experience, even in Japan standards. For the minimalist photographer, and indeed those that just want to do general and straight landscapes, it is a wonderful place to be. And I'd like to thank Martin and his team for getting us into locations that enable us to practice our art. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Frida from the UK, and I absolutely adore minimalist and abstract photography. Martin and his team have got us to the best locations, and Hokkaido is wonderful and a dream for any photographer who loves abstract and minimalist photography. Thank you, Martin.
Oh, thank you. Bill.
I'm Bill from Chicago, and my favorites were the trees of BA and the boat graveyard. I think this is the ideal place to do winter photography. I can't imagine a better place to do BA. And the trip was very well organized, and a nice touch of Japanese culture along the way as well.
Great stuff. Thank you, Bill. So, which way do I go?
Oh my God! Do the good girl first. Hi, I'm Kath Celia. I'm from Sydney, Australia, and I think one of my favourite shoots was a spot that we'd found on a morning of exploring, and it had the perfect tree with the perfect stream. It was just wonderful. The whole trip's been fantastic. Really enjoyed it. Thanks, Martin.
Thank you.
My name's Olga, and I'm from Sydney, Australia, and my dream is to be to photograph trees and snow, and I found them. They were just beautiful. The organisation and Martin's team just ran everything so beautifully. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Would you like to say a few words here, Sue, to finish up?
I'm Sue from the UK. I've had a wonderful trip with Martin, and his team have been exceptional. The country's beautiful, the scenery's been superb, and I have got the few minimalist photographs I wanted.
Oh, brilliant.
So I'm thrilled.
Oh,
Thank
that's
you.
Great. Thank you. So we'll finish up just quickly saying once again thanks to Yukiko and to Oikawa-san. Do you want to say a few words?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Yukiko from Yokohama. I'm the operator. I tried to say thank you very much for all the guests, the cooperation and kindness, and thanks to Martin and Oikawa-san, every hotel, restaurant. Thank you very much.
Okay, so let's give our driver a round of applause for being so wonderful. Oikawa-san,
arigatou gozaimashita.
And I hope to get a chance to travel with each and every one of you again. So thank you very much for coming. So that brings us to the end of this 3-part travelogue series to share our antics in the northernmost island of Japan on my Hokkaido winter photography adventure tour and workshop for 2018. I hope you enjoyed it. If you think you might like to join this tour in the future, either let us know that you'd like to be added to the 2019 cancellation list or secure a place on the 2020 tour with special guests Nicole S. Young and Brian Matias, who will be around to offer advice in addition to me, and we'll be doing a number of workshop sessions during the course of the tour. For details, see our tour page at mbp.ac/HLPA. Thanks very much for listening today. If you enjoy this podcast, please share a link with your friends. Subscribe in iTunes or your favorite podcast program to ensure uninterrupted delivery. If you have a moment to rate the podcast or leave us a review in iTunes, that helps to keep us relevant in the huge number of podcasts out there now. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook and Google+, and links to everything that I'm up to are at martinbaileyphotography.com, so do drop by and take a look. I'll be back next week with another episode, but in the meantime, you take care and have a great week, whatever you're doing. Bye-bye.